Sometimes what doesn't happen to you is more important than what does. Protection is not always seen, but it is always strategic. You think it's delayed, but God is blocking. You think it's rejection, but God is redirecting. And today, I'm going to show you 7 undeniable signs that the hand of God is wrapped around your life, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. Listen closely. This could be the confirmation your spirit has been waiting for. Unexplainable delays that saved you. You ever been stuck in traffic, angry, frustrated, questioning why everything is moving so slow, only to hear on the radio or see in the news later that there was a massive accident up ahead. And in that moment, it hits you. If I had left 5 minutes earlier, that could have been me. What felt like a delay was actually divine protection. You thought you were being inconvenienced, but you were actually being insulated. That's how God works. He delays you not to punish you, but to protect you from what your eyes can't see and your mind can't imagine. There are moments in life where things just don't go according to plan. You studied for months, submitted your application early, gave your best in the interview, and still didn't get the job. You felt devastated. You questioned your worth. You thought, why am I always overlooked? But then a few months later, you discover that company laid off half its staff, that department shut down, or there was some kind of scandal, and you pause, your spirit calms down because you realize, I didn't miss out. I was spared. That's a sign. When God is protecting you, He'll often delay what you think you want to give you what you truly need. Delay is not denial. It's often divine direction. But we live in a world that idolizes speed. We want fast results, instant success, overnight miracles. So when delay shows up, our natural instinct is to see it as failure. But spiritually, delay is sometimes God's way of putting you in a holding pattern because the airspace ahead is not safe. He's not just preparing your blessing, He's protecting your becoming. Let me give you a real-world scenario. Imagine a young woman who's deeply in love. She's planning her future around a man who seems perfect on paper. They've been dating for years. She's invested her time, her energy, her hope. But every time she tries to move forward, talking about engagement, planning the next step, something blocks it. Miscommunication happens. Doors shut. Fights erupt. He pulls back. She's heartbroken. She starts to feel like maybe she's cursed. But then 6 months later, she discovers he was living a double life. Another woman, another story, another truth. Now, what felt like delay was actually deliverance. God held her back, not to hurt her, but to keep her from building a life on lies. He didn't let the relationship move forward because the foundation was fake. That delay was protection wearing a disguise. This is what makes God's protection so mysterious. It doesn't always feel like a shield. Sometimes it feels like rejection. Sometimes it feels like missed opportunity. But protection doesn't always pat you on the back. Sometimes it slams the door in your face so you don't walk into fire. And that door might be labeled job, relationship, business deal, or even dream. But if it's not the right door, it's the wrong future. And when God delays it, it's not because He's withholding from you. It's because He's shielding you. Think about this. A young man applied for a scholarship overseas. All his documents were perfect. He had every qualification. Everyone told him he was a shoe. And he prayed, he fasted, he did everything by the book. But the results came and he wasn't selected. He was crushed, depressed for weeks. But exactly 2 months later, the country he was supposed to go to experienced a massive political crisis, visa bans, student deportations, campus violence. Suddenly, the place he dreamed of going to became the place people were desperate to escape. That young man didn't get a no. He got a rescue disguised as disappointment. You see, we often pray, God, protect me from my enemies. But we forget that sometimes the enemy is our own ambition. Sometimes the enemy is our own impatience. We want things so badly that we ignore the red flags. But God, in His mercy, slows us down, interrupts the plan, hits pause, and we get mad, we get bitter, we question Him. But later, when the full picture is revealed, we say, thank you, because what we wanted would have wrecked us. Sometimes God's protection looks like this. Everyone else is running, getting ahead, making moves, and you're stuck. You feel forgotten. But listen, slow progress is still progress when it's guided by God. Just because it's delayed doesn't mean it's denied. It might just be that God is working behind the scenes, clearing the landmines ahead so your steps don't destroy you. You're trying to move fast. He's trying to move safe. And sometimes the delay isn't even about danger. Sometimes it's about development. God's saying, I'm delaying this so I can strengthen that. He sees that your character can't carry the weight of what you're asking for yet. So He says, wait. Not because you're weak, but because He's making you strong. Not because He forgot, but because He loves you enough to prepare you. Think of it like this. A fruit picked too early might look good on the outside, but it won't taste right. It hasn't matured. It hasn't gone through enough sun, rain, and time. In the same way, God doesn't want to send you into your next season half ready. So He delays it not to frustrate you, but to finish you, to refine you, to ripen you. So the next time your plans fall apart, before you panic, pause. Ask yourself, is this delay a warning? Is this a detour from danger? Is this divine protection in disguise? Because when you really understand how God works, you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you start saying, what is God keeping me from? People walked away without reason. You ever had someone walk out of your life and you didn't even see it coming? One day they're calling you every morning, checking on you, encouraging you, saying they're in your corner, and the next, silence. No explanation, no closure, just distance. And you sit there wondering, what did I do wrong? Why would they leave me like that? You replay every conversation. You scroll through old messages. You search for the smallest clue that would explain the disappearance. But let me tell you something powerful sometimes when people walk away without reason. It's because God removed them before they could ruin you. You didn't lose them, they were subtracted. And subtraction is a form of protection. We often cry over the people God edited out of our story, not realizing their exit was the beginning of our freedom. You were loyal to someone who had a hidden agenda. You would have fought for someone who was secretly competing with you. And God saw what you couldn't, so he let them fall off quietly. That's not punishment, that's preservation. Sometimes the people closest to you are carrying the sharpest knives behind your back. And God, in his mercy, doesn't always expose them publicly. Instead, he lets the connection die silently. That's why you don't always get an apology. That's why they don't explain. Because the removal was divine. And when God removes someone, he doesn't ask them to explain their exit. He simply reroutes your destiny. I remember a woman who told her story. She had this best friend for over 10 years. They did everything together, traveled, worshiped, cried, laughed. This friend knew all her secrets. But the moment she got a promotion, when the blessings started to flow, that same friend started to act different. She became cold, distant, silent, and eventually just disappeared. No fight, no fallout, just gone. For months, that woman grieved like she'd lost a sister, until one day she found out that friend had been secretly talking about her behind her back, sabotaging her opportunities, smiling in her face, but planting seeds of doubt in the ears of others. And suddenly, what once felt like betrayal began to look like protection. God removed what her heart wasn't ready to let go of. Because sometimes your heart can be loyal to the wrong people, and God loves you enough to offend your emotions to protect your future. People think that spiritual warfare is always demons and darkness, but sometimes it's relationships sent to drain your energy, distract your purpose, and detour your destiny. And when those people suddenly vanish, it feels like abandonment. But what you don't see is the conversation God had about you in the spirit realm. He saw the seeds of jealousy starting to grow. He heard the hidden sarcasm in their tone. He saw what they were planning in the next season. So he allowed the connection to wither before it poisoned your progress. Listen to me. Not every loss is a tragedy. Some losses are necessary surgeries. And yes, it hurts because our humanity craves connection, but our destiny demands protection. So God says, I'd rather you cry for a season than bleed for a lifetime. That's why they ghosted you. That's why they never reached back out. That's why the friendship just dissolved like sugar in water. God didn't need your permission to protect you. He just moved in silence. Think about how many nights you would have stayed up worrying about them. How much energy you would have wasted trying to fix what wasn't supposed to last. God saw you trying to carry someone who was draining your vision. So he let them go. And now you're lighter, freer, sharper, even if it still stings. Sometimes we mourn the loss of people who were only assigned to a season. You keep asking, why did they walk away? When the better question is, what would have happened if they stayed? If they stayed, maybe your peace would have left. If they stayed, maybe your confidence would have drained. If they stayed, maybe you would have sacrificed your dreams to carry their insecurities. God knows who you can't take with you into your next level. There's a reason they didn't clap for you. There's a reason they never supported you when you started growing. It's because their loyalty was conditional. It was tied to your sameness. The moment you started rising, they started retreating, because some people don't hate you. They hate that you grew without them. And instead of confronting their own stagnation, they blamed your elevation. Let me give you another example. A young entrepreneur was building his brand. He had a team of close friends helping him. Or so he thought. Everything looked good on the surface. But every time he shared a new idea, somehow it leaked before launch. His competitors always seemed one step ahead. He was frustrated but couldn't trace the betrayal. Then one day, out of nowhere, one of his key friends said they were quitting the team, no reason. No argument, just gone. He felt blindsided. But weeks later, another team member confessed that friend had been feeding ideas to a rival company for months. And when things got too hot, they left to avoid being exposed. That young man didn't just lose a team member. He escaped a traitor. And he looked back and said, that was God. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. But when people walk away without reason, don't chase them. Don't beg for explanations. Sometimes God is saving you from private pain. Sometimes He's cutting the thread before it wraps around your neck. And though it feels personal, it's spiritual. When people leave your life without warning, understand this, their season expired. And if God allowed it, He's making room for something or someone better. You had a sudden urge to leave or avoid something. You ever had that sudden urge to leave a place? You were sitting in a room, everything seemed fine on the outside, music playing, people smiling, atmosphere calm. But something in your gut just told you, get up, leave, and you didn't know why, but you listened. Maybe it was a party, maybe it was a meeting, maybe it was just a random decision to take a different route home. And later, you found out something went wrong. Violence broke out, chaos erupted, danger showed up. And in that moment, you realized that strange, unexplainable urge wasn't just instinct. It was divine direction. There are moments in life when you don't need a voice from heaven. You just need to be sensitive to the stirring inside you. That stirring is not confusion. It's clarity at a higher frequency. Most people call it a gut feeling, but it's more than that. It's divine intel. It's God whispering to your spirit, move now, shift, exit, detour. And when you listen to it, you often don't realize how much danger you've avoided. You don't see the bullet you dodged, the crash that never came, the trap that didn't snap. You just feel peace, and that's your confirmation. There's a woman I know who was about to get on a bus late one evening. It was her regular commute, same stop, same route. But as she stepped onto the platform, she felt something in her chest tighten. Not pain, just pressure. Like something unseen was tugging her away from that vehicle. Everyone else was boarding, laughing, chatting. But she felt frozen. She stood there for a second, then turned around and walked back to the station. She waited for the next one. Hours later, she saw the news that same bus was involved in a deadly accident. Her heart dropped. Her knees buckled because she realized if she hadn't listened to that nudge, she might not have made it home. You see, God doesn't always protect you with flashing lights and thunderous warnings. Sometimes He protects you with subtle redirection. It's not loud, but it's loud enough in your soul. You might be driving and suddenly feel the urge to take a different road. You might be on a call and suddenly feel uneasy about closing that deal. You might be headed into a situation that looks safe but feels off, and that feeling is not paranoia, it's preservation. That sudden urge to leave, that random shift in your plans, that delay that made you miss a connection, it wasn't a coincidence, it was choreography. God moved the pieces around you so precisely that you didn't even know there was a storm forming in your blind spot. And by the time you realized it, you were already out of reach. That's not luck. That's protection in action. Let me take you into another story. A man was about to enter a partnership. Everything looked perfect on the surface. The other party was well-dressed, well-spoken, even had paperwork that checked out. But the night before signing the deal, the man couldn't sleep. He felt this heaviness in his chest. No peace, just this strange, restless energy that wouldn't let him relax. And the more he prayed, the more the urge grew. Don't do it. Back out. He didn't understand it. Everyone told him he was being paranoid, but he backed out anyway. Months later, that partner was exposed for fraud, corruption, and laundering money through businesses. Had that man gone forward, his name would have been in the headlines. His reputation ruined, his finances destroyed. But because he listened to that invisible hand guiding him in the silence, he was spared the fallout. You don't always see what you've been saved from, but if you stay sensitive, you'll feel it. Sometimes God will create discomfort just to reroute your destiny. You'll start feeling off in environments that once felt familiar. You'll begin to feel drained by conversations that once excited you. You'll lose interest in rooms you used to chase to get into, and you'll wonder what's wrong with you. But the truth is, nothing's wrong. You're just outgrowing the trap before you even realize it's a trap. There's a reason you didn't feel right going back to that place. There's a reason you felt uneasy hanging around those people. There's a reason you kept checking your phone, hoping the meeting would cancel. That wasn't anxiety. That was alignment. That was your spirit rejecting what your mind hadn't caught up with yet. God knows what you don't. He sees what you can't. And when He puts that urgency in your heart, don't delay. Don't second guess. Don't rationalize the risk. When God stirs you to move, you move, because the longer you linger in the wrong place, the more exposed you become. Sometimes your delay in obedience becomes an invitation for danger to enter. So when you feel that nudge, that holy discomfort, that subtle shift in your peace, it's time to go. And you may never get the full story. You may never find out what you avoided, but trust us, when peace exits the room, you should too. Peace is your bodyguard. It doesn't raise its voice. It just disappears when the atmosphere is wrong. So when you sense your peace slipping away, don't wait for confirmation. That urge is your signal. That stirring is your escape. And that exit might be your survival. Closed doors that made you angry. Then grateful you ever had a door slam in your face and you took it personally. A job you prayed for. An opportunity you planned for. A relationship you gave your all to. And just when you thought it was yours, the door closed so suddenly it knocked the wind out of your hope. You cried. You questioned. You probably even got angry with yourself for believing, angry at life for being unfair, angry at a system that seemed to reject your best efforts. But time passed, and here's the twist. What once broke your heart started to make sense. What once looked like rejection started looking like redirection. And now, when you look back, you realize that closed door was one of the greatest blessings in disguise. Closed doors don't always feel like protection when you're standing in front of them. In the moment, they feel like punishment, especially when you poured everything into it. When you gave your time, your energy, your prayers, and your preparation. And just when you're ready to walk through, boom, denied. We've gone with another candidate. We're sorry, we're not a match. This position has been filled. We decided to take a different direction. And you're sitting there thinking, God, why would you let me get this close just to say no? Let me tell you something that might set you free. God is not cruel, he's calculated. When he shuts a door, he's not doing it to deprive you. He's doing it to direct you. He saw something behind that door you didn't. He saw the stress that would have hit you 6 months later. He saw the manipulation that was hiding behind the flattery. He saw the burnout behind that big paycheck. And because you didn't see it, he closed it. Not to hurt you, but to help you avoid what your heart was too invested in to recognize as danger. There was a young woman who applied to her dream company. She'd been preparing for years, had the degree, the internship, the recommendation letters, everything. The interview went well. They smiled, they nodded. She was already envisioning her office, picking out outfits, dreaming of the salary. But days later, she got an email. We've decided to move forward with another candidate. She was devastated, felt like the rug had been pulled from under her, questioned everything, her qualifications, her worth, even her prayers. Fast forward 2 years, that same company ended up in a massive scandal, bankruptcy, fraud, mass layoffs, and leadership exposed for toxic practices. That dream job would have become a nightmare. And in that moment, her tears turned to praise. She realized God wasn't ignoring me. He was saving me. That's how protection works. It rarely announces itself in the moment, but it reveals itself in the outcome. Closed doors are one of the most painful blessings you'll ever receive. And the blessing isn't just in what you avoided. It's in what you're now free to walk into, because every closed door is a cue for redirection. It forces you to reevaluate, to dig deeper, to stretch further, to explore options you never would have considered. And sometimes the only way God can get you to your true assignment is by closing the counterfeit doors. The doors that looked right but would have robbed your peace. It's just like dating someone who checks all the boxes on paper. Good looks, great job, charming personality, but deep down, something's off. You don't see it at first. You're focused on the surface. You ignore the red flags because the packaging looks like a blessing. And then out of nowhere, they walk away, or they ghost you, or the relationship implodes, and you're left crying over a connection that was never built to carry your future. But later, you see who they really were. You hear how they treated the next person. You see the chaos they were hiding behind the charm, and suddenly you're not mad anymore. You're grateful because you dodged a disaster that your emotions were too blind to see. See, God doesn't owe you explanations, but he does give you outcomes, and the outcome will always reveal his hand. So when a door closes, don't just stare at it in pain. Turn around, look for the one that opened quietly while you were grieving. Sometimes the blessing is not in what you walked into, but in what you didn't walk into. It's the promotion that would have drained your family. It's the opportunity that would have cost you your identity. It's the platform that would have inflated your ego, but deflated your soul. There's a businessman I know, got rejected by a major investor. The deal was 90% done. All that was left was a signature, but the investor pulled out last minute with no explanation. The man was furious. Weeks of preparation, meetings, contracts gone. He thought it was over. But instead of quitting, he pushed harder. He went back to the drawing board, found a new strategy, and 6 months later, another investor came along. Bigger capital, better terms, more integrity. And today, that business is thriving in ways the original deal never could have allowed. And you know what he says now? That no saved my company. You see, in every closed door is a test of your perspective. Will you see it as a curse, or will you trust it as a course correction? Most of us miss the miracle because we're too focused on the denial to see the divine detour. But if you zoom out, if you step back, if you allow time to reveal the purpose, you'll discover that closed doors don't just protect you from harm, they also protect you from settling, from shrinking, from attaching to less than you deserve. So the next time a door closes, don't panic, don't spiral. Pause, reflect, and ask yourself, what is this saving me from? Because protection isn't always wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it's wrapped in frustration. And sometimes the greatest breakthroughs start with a slammed door and a broken heart that refuses to quit. You keep escaping situations you shouldn't have survived. You ever look back at a situation and wonder, how in the world did I make it out of that? I'm talking about the things you brushed off like they were normal, but deep down you knew you weren't supposed to survive that. You weren't supposed to bounce back from that heartbreak. You weren't supposed to walk away from that accident. You weren't supposed to still be standing after that betrayal, that diagnosis, that breakdown. But here you are, breathing, standing, living, thriving. And it wasn't because you were lucky. It wasn't because you were stronger than everyone else. It was because something was shielding you, something bigger than you, something that had already declared, not this one, not today. There are moments you didn't even know were warfare. Times you walked into rooms where your name was being dragged, your reputation was being assassinated, your downfall was being plotted, and you left that room unaware, smiling, confident, at peace. Why? Because what they whispered behind your back couldn't override what God had written over your life. That's protection. That's divine escape. That's when God pulls you out of traps you didn't even see coming. That's when He blocks attacks you weren't even praying about. That's when He assigns angels to cancel out ambushes that were already scheduled in hell. Let me tell you something. They thought the breakup would break you. They thought the job loss would crush you. They thought the scandal would silence you. They thought the sickness would stop you. They thought the anxiety would imprison you. But somehow you kept walking. You kept rising. You kept rebuilding. That's not just strength. That's divine preservation. That's favor on your name that confuses your enemies. That's grace that makes no logical sense. There was a young man who used to drive home the same way every night. One evening, something told him, take a different route. He hesitated for a second. It was out of the way. It didn't make sense. But the pull was too strong to ignore, so he turned and drove the long way home. That night, on his usual route, a 5-car pileup happened. Same time he would have been on that road. Lives were lost. Chaos broke out. But he made it home unharmed. That's not coincidence. That's escape. And that escape was a sign. Sometimes the real miracle isn't what you gain. It's what you survive. It's the toxic people you didn't end up married to. It's the business deal you didn't sign. It's the addiction that didn't consume you. It's the depression that didn't take you out. It's the accident that missed you by inches. It's the betrayal that didn't bitter you. That's the kind of protection that doesn't make headlines, but it makes testimonies. It makes warriors out of warriors. It makes survivors out of the broken. Think about that job you didn't get, that apartment you didn't move into, that friend you cut off. You thought you were losing something. But the truth is, you were escaping something. You were being pulled out before the fire reached you. You were being covered before the bullets started flying. You were being redirected before the storm came, and you didn't even see it. You were mad at God for not answering your prayer. But now you see, He did answer. He just answered by saving you from what you thought you wanted. I know a woman who trusted someone deeply, a business partner, a friend, someone she believed had her best interests at heart. They started a project together, built a brand, made plans, but then cracks started showing, money started disappearing, lies started surfacing, and one day, without warning, the person cut her off and tried to destroy her name. At first, she was devastated, but fast forward, every room that person tried to sabotage her in, she ended up being celebrated in. Every lie that was spoken about her became fuel for the truth to rise. She lost a friend, but she gained her freedom. She escaped manipulation she didn't even recognize. That's the kind of protection you don't always appreciate in the moment, but it saves your future. Sometimes the scariest things in life are the ones you don't even know you avoided. You think your life is ordinary until you hear what others went through in the same places you came out of. You thought you just went to the party and came home, but someone else went and never made it back. You thought you just dated a narcissist and walked away, but someone else dated one and ended up in therapy for years. You thought the sickness was just a phase, but someone else got the same diagnosis and never left the hospital. That's what it means to be preserved, to be covered, to be protected. You didn't survive because you were clever. You survived because God had already stamped your story with purpose. You survived because your destiny is too valuable to be cut short. You survived because what was meant to end you was rerouted. That car that swerved just in time, that friend who came by when you were at your lowest, that job that opened up when you thought you had no options. Those weren't random. They were escape hatches. They were divine interventions that showed up in the form of delays, detours, and even disappointments. People don't always understand why you praise the way you do. They don't get why you protect your peace so fiercely. They think you're extra, but they don't know what you've escaped. They don't know how close you were to quitting. They don't know the nights you cried and the mornings you still got up. They don't know the weight you carried while smiling in public. They don't know the battles you fought in silence and won. You were never supposed to survive some of those things, but you did. You keep escaping situations that should have taken you out. And every time you do, it's another reminder you're not walking alone. You're not surviving by chance. You're being shielded by grace. You're being led by purpose, and you're being kept for something bigger than what tried to break you. You lose things that were silently destroying you. You ever lose something and feel like your whole world is falling apart? You lose a relationship, a job, a position, a friendship, and your heart feels like it's being ripped open from the inside out. And yet, months later, years even, you begin to see it clearly. That thing you were crying over, that person you were begging to stay, that door you were desperately trying to keep open was actually draining the life out of you. You weren't losing peace when it left, you were gaining it. You weren't losing love, you were getting free from manipulation dressed in affection. You weren't being rejected, you were being rescued. Some losses are heaven's way of cleaning house. You thought that friend was loyal, but every time they spoke, they planted doubt in your spirit. You thought that relationship was the one, but slowly it made you question your worth. You thought that job was your dream, but it was choking your creativity, draining your soul, and forcing you to shrink who you are just to fit in. And when it ended, you thought it was a curse. But in reality, it was deliverance. Because anything that requires you to suffocate your purpose to keep it is not a blessing, it's bondage. Let me tell you something that will free your mind. Not every subtraction in your life is a loss. Sometimes it's surgery. You don't thank a surgeon during the operation. The cut hurts, the healing stings. But months later, when the wound is gone and the infection is removed, you realize the cut was the cure. God doesn't just remove things that are bad. He removes things that are comfortable but limiting. People who clap for you but don't celebrate you. Situations that pay you but don't grow you. Habits that help you cope but keep you stuck. Sometimes he takes it, not to punish you, but to protect you from settling for something far beneath your call. I know a man who stayed in a corporate job for over 10 years. Great salary, benefits, status. But every day, he felt like he was slowly dying inside. He had a vision to start his own company, but never had the courage to do it until one day, layoffs. No warning, just gone. No goodbye party, no appreciation, just a pink slip. He was devastated, depressed. Felt like a failure, but within that pain was his push. He took that loss and turned it into launch. He started the business. Struggled at first, but kept building. Today, that company employs over 100 people. And now when he looks back, he doesn't see a layoff, he sees a liberation. Sometimes the thing you think is destroying your life is actually destroying the chains that were holding your life hostage. That heartbreak that shattered you, it broke you open so you could finally heal what you've been ignoring. That friend who left without a word, their exit exposed how fragile the foundation really was. That rejection letter, it forced you to find a path you never would have chosen, but turned out to be the door to everything you prayed for. God's protection is often disguised as painful loss, but look deeper and you'll see he didn't take it to hurt you. He took it to save the part of you that was suffocating in silence. There's a woman I know who was in a toxic relationship. Everyone around her could see the red flags, but love will blind you when you've convinced yourself that this is the best you can get. She kept making excuses, ignoring her intuition, silencing her voice, until one day, out of nowhere, he left her. No explanation, just gone. She thought she would die from the pain. She didn't eat. She didn't sleep. But in that stillness, she finally began to hear herself again. She started to remember who she was before she bent herself just to keep him interested. And little by little, the pain began to turn into power. She went back to school, built a new circle, started loving herself out loud. And now when she talks about that loss, she calls it the greatest blessing I ever cried over. You see, we often cry over what was taken before we realize it was killing us slowly. Not all toxins come in ugly packages. Some are dressed in charm. Some smile in your face. Some feed your ego while starving your soul. But when they leave, the silence feels heavy until you realize you can breathe again. You can laugh again. You can think again without fear of being judged. That's when you know you didn't lose peace. You gained clarity. You didn't lose love. You escaped imprisonment. What you lose in life will often reveal what you were tolerating. You were tolerating disrespect, but calling it compromise. You were tolerating stress, but calling it success. You were tolerating chaos, but calling it passion. And so when it's gone, your spirit doesn't just feel lighter, it feels free. That's divine protection. That's God stepping in and removing what you didn't have the strength to walk away from on your own. So when something leaves your life, pause before you chase it. Reflect before you mourn it. Ask yourself, was this feeding my future? Or was it just familiar? Because not everything that feels good is good for you. And not everything that leaves you is a loss. Some things walk away because you didn't have the courage to close the door yourself. And God in His grace shuts it for you. Not to punish you, not to leave you empty, but to make room for something your soul has been crying out for: peace, clarity, purpose, and growth. Your peace makes no sense. You ever look around your life and realize you should be losing your mind, but you're not. The bills are piling up. People walked out on you. Your health got hit. The job is unstable, and yet you're calm. You wake up and you're not falling apart. You smile and you're not faking it. You're going through storms that would have broken you last year, but now you've got this stillness in your soul. That's not normal. That's not logic. That's not therapy alone. That's divine. That's evidence that something supernatural is anchoring your mind when everything else says you should be drowning. There's a kind of peace that doesn't wait for things to get better. It shows up while the fire is still burning. It walks with you through the chaos. It whispers to you in the noise and says, you're still safe. It's not that you're ignoring reality. It's that you're tapped into something deeper than reality. Peace that makes no sense doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from connection. When your life is grounded in purpose, when you know your storms don't cancel your destiny, you stop panicking over things you can't control. You don't lose your mind over temporary chaos because you know you're being carried through it, not buried under it. I know a woman who went through 3 back-to-back losses: her job, her relationship, and her health. It looked like life was trying to destroy her from every angle. Her friends expected her to break down. They waited for her to collapse, but she didn't. She got quiet. She got still. She didn't deny the pain, but she refused to let it define her. And while people around her were saying, I don't know how you're still standing, she would smile and say, because I know who's holding me up. That's peace. That's not found in books or bank accounts. That's built through fire. That's born in pressure. When your peace confuses people, that's when you know it's real, because people are trained to respond to struggle with panic, to respond to rejection with bitterness, to respond to pressure with fear. But when you start walking through valleys and still have vision, when you get betrayed and still bless others, when everything is shifting and you're still stable, that's the kind of peace that makes demons nervous. Because it means their weapons are hitting you, but they're not affecting you. It means you've graduated from reacting to rising, from stressing to strategizing, from fear to faith. I remember a man who lost everything in a flood: his house, his business, his memories, all gone in a matter of hours. News reporters came to interview him expecting devastation. Instead, he said, everything I lost can be rebuilt, but I still have my mind, I still have my hope, and I still believe my best days are ahead of me. That's not just courage, that's revelation. That's when you understand that peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of perspective. It's knowing that even if the storm takes the boat, it can't take the journey. Even if it takes the job, it can't cancel the calling. This kind of peace isn't soft, it's fierce. It's not passive, it's powerful. It's not about pretending you're okay. It's about knowing you will be. It's about having a center so strong that outer conflict can't shake your inner conviction. People around you will look confused when you don't react the way they expect. They'll think you've gone numb, but you haven't. You've gone deep. You've reached a level of awareness that says, even this has to work for my good. Even this pain has purpose. Even this loss is leading me somewhere better. You've got to understand, peace doesn't mean you don't cry. It means you don't quit. It doesn't mean you don't feel the weight. It means you don't let it crush you. Peace is when you've been through the worst and still expect the best. Peace is when you've seen darkness and still believe in light. Peace is when your bank account says panic, but your spirit says plan. When the doctor gives you news that shakes others, but you respond with faith that stabilizes. When the relationship ends, but you don't crumble, you recalibrate. One of the most powerful things you can ever carry is peace that doesn't rely on evidence. Peace that's not waiting for the storm to pass, but knows how to dance in the rain. Peace that says, I might not have what I wanted, but I have what I need to keep going. That's what breaks generational curses. That's what heals trauma. That's what transforms families. Because when you have that kind of peace, you stop repeating patterns. You stop letting fear make your decisions. You stop letting temporary people steal permanent joy. You become rooted, unshakable. And when the winds come, and they will, you don't get blown away. You bend, but you don't break. Think about it. You've been through storms before. You've cried in silence. You've sat in cars screaming behind the wheel. You've laid in bed praying to wake up to a different life. But look at you now, still breathing, still building, still believing. That's not weakness. That's power disguised as peace. That's the kind of strength the world doesn't understand, because they expect the loud ones to be the leaders. But the quiet storm, the one who walks in peace while everything is burning, that's the one who carries unshakable purpose. You didn't come this far to quit now. You didn't walk through fire just to turn to ashes. You were built for more, crafted in the silence, molded in the pressure, and chosen in the chaos. Every moment you thought was breaking you was actually building something unshakable inside of you. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are a product of your decisions. And the moment you decide that your peace is more valuable than people's opinions, your destiny begins to rise from the dust. The greatest battles you fought weren't the ones people saw. They were the silent wars inside your mind. The nights you wiped your own tears and still showed up the next morning. The days you encouraged others while your own heart was bleeding. That's not weakness, that's divine resilience. That's the kind of spirit no storm can break. The kind of power that makes fear back up. The kind of faith that walks through hell with gasoline shoes and says, I still won't burn. You see, real strength isn't in how loud you speak. It's in how well you stand. When the winds of life blow, do you crumble or do you anchor deeper? When people leave, do you fall apart or do you rise in silence and build something better? Your story is not defined by who walked away. It's written by how you rose after the heartbreak. You may have lost time, tears, relationships, even dreams, but you didn't lose you. And if you still have you still have the raw material for a comeback that will confuse every enemy who counted you out. People may doubt your calling because they don't understand your process. But what they didn't see were the nights you cried out and kept going. What they didn't hear were the whispers of courage you spoke to yourself when no one else showed up. What they don't know is that while others were partying, you were planting. While others were quitting, you were learning. While others were watching, you were working. And now the season is shifting. And the seeds you've sown in the dark are getting ready to break through the surface. Let them talk, let them question, let them laugh. Because soon they'll have no choice but to watch the very thing they said would never rise. You're not here to play small. You're not here to be invisible. You're not here to shrink for the comfort of others. You're here to shine in your lane, to walk in your purpose, to carry the kind of peace that becomes contagious, to show the world that pressure didn't kill you, it crowned you. And every valley you passed through was training for a victory you're about to walk in. You've survived too much to doubt yourself now. Your scars are not proof of weakness. They're proof you've been in the fight and made it out. So hold your head high, adjust your crown. Remind your soul that just because the path is narrow doesn't mean the vision is small. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not holy. Just because it's painful doesn't mean it's not purposeful. You are the storm they weren't ready for. You are the answer to a problem that's been waiting for your voice, your hands, your gift. Don't you dare quit now. Don't you dare water down your vision to fit someone else's comfort zone. Don't you dare bury what was born in you just to be accepted by people who don't even accept themselves. Stand tall, speak loud, walk boldly. The world doesn't need another copy, it needs the real you. Remember this, lions don't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. Eagles don't fly with pigeons. And gold doesn't beg to be valued. It shines whether it's in a palace or the dirt. And you were born to shine, to rise, to lead, to transform, not despite your battles, but because of them. So go ahead, let peace be your weapon. Let purpose be your compass. Let pressure be your platform. And when they ask how you made it, how you stayed standing, how you kept smiling through it all, just tell them, I was protected, I was preserved, I was purposed. And no storm, no betrayal, no delay, and no devil could take from me what was already mine.